protein. Okay, we all need protein. Now, everybody usually, if you're a vegetarian, you get into the soybean stuff. The problem with soybeans is soybeans have been genetically modified. So that's probably not your best source of protein. But peanut butter could be another source of protein. Nuts is a source of protein. So start looking at things that you can do or get and that will store, that will provide you all the nutrients that you need in order to make it through and extend through this period of time. Okay. One note on food, and I'm not sure, hopefully I don't get into it later, but if I do, I will meet again. But in this case of the snowstorm, when you go to start eating the food, then the thing, and say the power is out, the thing that you're going to focus on first are your fresh fruits and vegetables. Use them out of the freezer. Use anything that's frozen that you can't store immediately, because those are the foods that are going to go bad first, and you want to use those before you start using things that are canned, dehydrated, or freeze dried. Okay. Now, in regards to those supplies that we were just talking about, where are these supplies located? Okay, and be specific, because, for example, a wife puts stuff up and she has things in different cupboards, counters, closets, under beds, wherever she puts them, or a husband. Sometimes they kind of fail to talk to each other. The person who actually stores the stuff is going to know where that stuff is. The person who doesn't is going to will have to look for all that stuff. So if you actually list where these items are, then it doesn't matter who's in charge or who's running things, for whatever reason. Somebody may not be there. Something may happen to them. They may be unconscious or whatever, and they need some of the items that are in the supply closet. By identifying where these supplies are, then they'll be able to find them, especially if you have a group. Now, this kind of ties in also with this cache system, and people have asked me about having caches and stuff. Again, caches can be beneficial that are outside of the shelter-in-place location or the bug-in location, whatever you want to call it. It can even be outside of your bug-out location if that's where you're going during this event. The thing that you want to make sure is that these items are secure. In other words, that people can't find them, that there's a chance, no chance that folks will find them. Preferably, you want it on your property. If that's not possible, then you may want it in some kind of a public area, like a national forest, national park, or state county park. Yeah, that gets into some tricky gray areas, especially for legality. But if you put it on somebody else's property, unless you have had prior permission, it's a good way to get shot. Okay, so remember, things are not going to be operating as normal during a event. And while we're using a snowstorm as the event in this, that seems kind of mundane. We've kind of all been through them before, but you never know how people are going to react when things really start to get bad. Okay, so try not to. I would highly recommend you don't store anything on somebody else's property unless you have talked to them and have already gotten prior permission from them in order to put that stuff on there. And that means that you need to make sure that everybody in that household or that has anything to do with that property knows what's going on. For example, if you've got a family, husband and a wife, and they have adult grown kids that live out of town, out of city, out of state, whatever, and they come back and the parents have been evacuated, left, passed away, whatever, they need to know that you have permission already from their parents to get on there, because they may change their mind and say, sorry, you can't come on, and then where will you be? Okay, so just make sure that you have permission, that you put it in a place that can't be found, and that things are going to be able to, you're going to be able to access those things after the event has occurred. Okay, so we've done the sources, the supply, that includes the water, all that. Now, we're going to talk about skills. What skills are you going to need to survive this situation and this event? What skills do you guys have? Now, if it's a group, what skills do the group have? And this is kind of tricky, because a lot of people want to say, yeah, I can do this, I can do that, I can start a fire in a blizzard, I can start a fire with 500 mile per hour winds. Yeah, okay, but make sure that they can really do, or that you can really do. So you don't want to, you have to be brutally honest here. If there is a skill that you have, great. If there's a skill that you're kind of mediocre in, that's also fine. Okay, but don't claim a skill, whoever it is, that you cannot do. Okay, or that you haven't actually done, because that's something that needs to be identified now, because in the next step we're going to talk about these. So then you're going to, once you've identified all the skills that you and or your group have, now you're going to identify all the skills that you need in order to survive this event. Okay, in the case of the snowstorm and the power goes out, you're going to have to be able to build a fire somewhere, some way. You're going to have to be able to cook, or at least warm up food over this fire that you build. You're going to have heat in order to stay warm. You're going to have water. So identify these different skills, whatever they are. Now, if you start getting into stuff hits the fan kinds of scenarios, then you're going to start to get into a lot of other different skills. Basically survival types of skills, security types of skills. How can you protect your perimeter, your location, your supplies, the people that are with you? All of these are things, skills and stuff that you're going to have in order to survive a situation in which the civil veneer, or the civilized veneer, has been peeled away. Okay, so again, just as we did with the supplies, now we're going to compare the two lists. What skills do we have? What skills do we need? What skills do we need to work on? And this is where that mediocre. So I can start a fire, but I need to have a match or lighter. Okay, that's great. You can start a fire, and as long as you have a match or lighter, you're okay. But what happens if you don't? So that's when you then have to start to learn how to create a fire without having a match and without having a lighter. Okay, so that means like using a 9-volt battery and a piece of steel wool, using a bow, and creating a fire from the bow, in which that's a hard skill. I mean, that's one of the tougher ways to have to light a fire. It works, you can do it, but it takes some energy to do that. Okay, and then you want to list the skills that you need to work on. Okay, and then you want to prioritize that list. So, for example, fire, building a fire, all different ways. End result is you have to have fire. You have to have fire for heat. You have to have fire for cooking. You have to have a fire. Okay, So that's going to be one of the top skills that you want to make sure that you're able to do. And